Hello and welcome to this Astranti video. Today we'll be looking at the subject of corporate governance and asking what factors go into creating a strong corporate governance framework. Well, one of the most influential guidelines to international corporate governance are these 5 principles, released by the OECD to assist governments in their efforts to evaluate and improve corporate governance. And that's what we'll specifically be looking at today. If you're studying for BA4 or E1, you'll have to have a firm grip on these principles, as you may well be tested on them in your exam. This is an extract from our video on Chapter 16 of our E1 course. But if you want to see the full video, this can be found on the Astranti website, where you can find a whole range of study materials to help you pass your exam. But for now, let's jump in and consider these 5 key principles.
So these are 5 key principles of corporate governance. So there we go. We've got the principles of corporate governance in the center, and we've got our 5 key principles around the central title. So let's take this in turn, and we're going to begin with the rights and the equitable treatment of shareholders. So what this is saying is that organizations should respect the rights of shareholders and help shareholders exercise their rights. Now, they can help shareholders exercise their rights by openly and effectively communicating information and by encouraging shareholders to participate in the business's general meeting. So, for example, an organization will hold an AGM, an annual general meeting. Now, this is a meeting held once a year with the board of directors and the shareholders in attendance, where a number of key issues are discussed and then put to the vote. This gives shareholders the ability to voice any concerns and vote on relevant matters. Now, it's really important for businesses to make sure that shareholders are given the opportunity to have a voice in the company, because they are the owners of the company. And so this first principle we're looking at is making sure that shareholders' rights are respected because they are the owners of the business, and also that the board of directors should encourage the shareholders to participate in the direction of the business through voting at AGMs, for example. Okay, the next principle is the interests of other stakeholders. Now, we noted, didn't we, in our definition of corporate governance, that the shareholders' rights are generally considered the most important, but the interests of other stakeholders are really important, and organizations should recognize that they have a legal, contractual, social, and market-driven obligation to other stakeholders, non-shareholder stakeholders. And we've already gone through the list of stakeholders, haven't we? From suppliers to customers to local communities. So if we think about employees, for example, an organization has a number of legal requirements to make sure that their staff are given appropriate training, are given appropriate resources, have their holiday entitlement given to them, they have the appropriate health and safety training, and that's not an exhaustive list. Even though the employees don't necessarily hold shares in the company, it's really clear that they are an important factor in the performance of the business, and so a moral duty of care is owed to them by the business. So that's our second principle. Our third principle is the role and responsibilities of the board. So the board needs sufficient relevant skills and understanding to review and challenge management performance. It also needs adequate size and appropriate levels of independence and commitment. Now, this idea also links to the idea that members of the board should be appointed based on their skills and experience, not because of nepotism or cronyism. Now, nepotism is when family members are given preference, and cronyism is when friends are appointed to positions of authority without any regard to their experience or skills. And so by making sure that there's formal and rigorous procedures in place for appointing members of the board, nepotism and cronyism is reduced. And so what should happen is those that are elected to the board have sufficient and relevant skills to drive the business forward. Okay, the next principle is integrity and ethical behavior. Now, integrity should be fundamental requirements in choosing corporate officers and board members. Organizations should develop their own code of conduct for their directors and executives, which promotes ethical and responsible decision making. Now, integrity means an individual should behave fairly and always do the right thing, acting in a professional manner and considering the wider impact of all decisions that are made on others. Now, as we've seen, there have been numerous cases of chief executives and other top-level members of organizations engaging in morally dubious behavior. Enron, we're talking about you. Directors should be chosen who show the highest of moral standards to avoid these situations occurring. Okay, and our final principle is disclosure and transparency. Now, organizations should clarify and make publicly known the roles and responsibilities of board and management so that stakeholders have a level of accountability. Organizations should also implement procedures to independently verify and safeguard the integrity of the company's financial reporting. Any disclosure of significant and relevant matters relating to the organization should be done in a timely and balanced manner to make sure that all investors have access to clear, factual information. Now, one way to do this is through the company's annual report, where a whole range of financial and non-financial information is disclosed. Now, most annual reports contain a section on the governance of the business, including details of executive and non-executive directors of an organization with a breakdown of their key responsibilities and roles. Now, we're going to come on to NEDs, non-executive directors, later on in the video. This gives interested parties the ability to identify an individual or group of individuals who have responsibility for a particular aspect of the managing of the business. So there we go. There's our 5 key principles of corporate governance, which the documents that we looked at earlier on are based upon. And I think they're all kind of common sense, aren't they, really? Starting with making sure the owners of the business, are treated well and encouraged to participate. Then we go down making sure that other stakeholders, such as employees' interests, are looked after. And then we go down to the role and responsibilities of the board, making sure that you have board members that have expertise and skills and have been elected to the board based on that experience and knowledge rather than just whose family member they are. And making sure everyone acts with integrity and in an ethically minded way, and making sure that all this process is transparent so that the stakeholders understand what's going on and any serious material is disclosed to stakeholders so again they understand what's actually happening in the business. And if we think back to Enron, there was no disclosure. No one really knew what was going on, did they? So hopefully we can see the reasons for these 5 key principles. So there we go.